Welcome to Detecting Intelligence, the only show that treats AI like a crime scene. We bag the evidence, dust the hype for fingerprints, and interrogate the breakthroughs. Then we ask the only question that matters. Are we closer to AGI? Let's find out. Here are your hosts, Frank and Ronnie.
Good morning, Ronnie.
Good morning, Vietnam. No, that's not funny, given the current situation right now. Anyway, sorry, folks. GM, how is everybody doing? But more specifically, how are you doing, Frank?
I'm doing great. It's been a little bit of a pause here just for some holidays, but I'm back, feel rested, and ready to get into this, and excited about our upcoming launch as well, too.
Tell us about the holiday. You went to Florida. Any highlights? Did you see Mickey? Did you see Mr. Trump?
None of the above.
Did you see the Loch Ness Monster in Florida? What'd you see? What'd you do?
Yeah, we went to actually a little place called Sanibel, which is on the Gulf Coast, and it's an island just off of the coast of Fort Myers. Beautiful little spot. If anyone is looking for a space to kind of go that is quiet and you can feel like you get away.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting though. My wife and I, we were talking like, maybe we retire here, and it looks like there's a real opportunity for a food truck. So maybe we would get into a food truck business.
No way.
But it was funny though, because the majority of people that are residents of the island are like 65 plus. So it's definitely retirement.
I know you're Canadian, so you may not know this, but here in the States, like, it's well known that you go off to retire and die in Florida. I don't know if you knew that in Canada. You know that?
We're actually, it's the same thing here where they call them snowbirds though, because we're only allowed to be in the US for 6 months at a time. So they really maximize the winter season down in Florida.
Yeah. And I don't think you got the memo, Frank. Everybody's leaving the United States. Nobody's coming here.
Well, then, maybe property will be even cheaper.
Well, in Florida, because it's sinking. Yes, it probably will. But anyways, folks, this is Detecting Intelligence. This is a daily live stream that Frank and I host weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on Twitch, X. We're on YouTube right now. And soon, I think TikTok eventually, probably at some point, right? Yeah, we'll probably do TikTok soon, because why not? We're just trying to keep this to a quick 30 minutes every day, just to bring you the latest in what's going on in AI, AGI, in tech, crypto, blockchain, and maybe a couple other fun things. And we're just kind of bringing the information that we feel like is relevant to you, things that you should probably know. Just trying to, bring you as much value as possible. So I'm based in New York City. I'm kind of doing the whole intro episode 1 thing again, even though this may or may not be episode 1. But yeah, just to give you a quick little background on me, since we've been away for a little bit. I'm born and raised in New York City. I'm a lifelong technologist. And I just have been messing with technology for 30 plus years now. And I just kind of want to be able to kind of synthesize all this stuff, because even for me, that's reading and playing with all these things all day long. There's still some things that you miss, and there's a lot of important things that even I miss. And so we're just trying to kind of capture those things and bring them to you in a nice, quick, synthesized way. Frank, did I miss anything?
No, I think you covered it well. One of the main goals of this series that we're doing is also to see where we stack up against the AI 2027 timeline. And for those that aren't familiar, we should probably share the link again here as well too, just as this is our foundation and what we're kind of measuring our progress towards. And so AGI, for those that don't know, also stands for Artificial General Intelligence. And many believe that this is the moment that will change everything in regards to how we spend our day-to-day and work and live. So it's a fairly interesting topic for us to kind of keep tabs on. The resources that we've put together also for this show are we're curating a newsletter that we're just still in the final thralls of editing, and should have that ready for release very soon. but it captures essentially the whole landscape and reviews all of the main news stories. And these are news stories from the big companies, from credible sources, around how AI is progressing towards this AGI moment. And then we're assigning an IQ score, which I think is kind of unique. We haven't really seen too many people talking about the IQ of AI. And for us, it's an interesting way to kind of measure it against human ability. There's some really good news that actually this morning that we're going to be talking about around other companies that are now doing something similar, but that's essentially the gist of the show. Is we're looking at all the news and how it kind of stacks up in this pathway to AGI.
You said it. Yeah, I'm really excited about the newsletter. We're still taking around with it. But me personally, of course, and I'm biased, I'm a fan. I mean, I think it's definitely a newsletter that I look forward to getting every evening so far, and it's just a nice little stream of quick hits of just what's going on in the AI space. So I'm a fan of it. And yeah, and this was an idea that was born out of Frank, just this whole AGI IQ score thing. I think it's fun. I think it's great. And it's going to be, it's going to be interesting to track over time for however long you and I do this. We think it'll be fun for you guys too. But we'll delve deeper into how we're scoring all this stuff. You can find out within the newsletter on how we're capturing all that stuff. But we'll do a little deep dive into it because I need it for myself too. I'd like to understand a little bit more as to how we're capturing and scoring this, because it may very well could be, who knows, might be a benchmark that other people in the community kind of look to. And measure against what's actually happening out there. So that's part of the goal here as well. So it's fun, it's cool, I like it. I'm glad that you and I are doing it and nobody else is. We got it first, but we'll see if it's relevant at all or useful. But for right now, it'll be contained in our newsletter.
And I think you made a good point, Ronnie. With our plan to have the official episode 1 potentially for next week. Maybe that's what we dig into for episode 1 is how does this newsletter work? How does it develop this IQ score? I think that'd be a very relevant first episode that people could also come back to. So we should plan to talk about that on the first episode.
We will. All right. Well, let's get into the first story here.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring it up on stage. Let's do that. All right, here we go. Let me just adjust this a little bit more. All right, here we go. So brought to us by edtechinnovationhub.com. All right, OpenClaw. Google DeepMind and Kaggle open AI benchmark contest with $200,000 prize pool. All right, so this is pretty interesting. So all right, so Google DeepMind and Kaggle launched a $200,000 hackathon, essentially to figure out if we have AGI or also kind of what we're doing is how the hell do we actually measure this? And the way that they're going about this is really, Frank and I chatted about this briefly before the show. Is I kind of gave my definition of what I think AGI is. And I think I was kind of on the same track. So basically what Google DeepMind and Kaggle are trying to do here is really trying to test out AGI's cognitive abilities, not just, here's a task, finish the task. Maybe it's testing out its nuance abilities in a way. And that's a new word that I learned recently. Frank, what's your take on Google DeepMind and this AGI collaboration here with Kaggle? I think it's great.
Yeah, I would echo that as well too. I think very timely, considering that we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, more than a few weeks. It certainly is something that is important. Like how do we measure its ability? And I think this is all based off of a blog post that Google released back around the 17th of March. That was what are the systems essentially that we could put in place to measure intelligence. And a couple of things that they highlighted in that report are pretty interesting. There's 10 cognitive abilities that they're suggesting.
I got them. Learning, reasoning, memory, attention, social understanding, problem solving, and metacognition. and so for those who need the definition of that, like myself, metacognition is thinking about how you think.
Yeah, interesting, right? Like I think, no pun intended there, but it's very accurate in just looking at even how a human operates. So there's no talk here about like an IQ score, which I'd be interested to see if that's what the outcome is, that they're going to be assigning an IQ score. But yeah, essentially, this is a great way to get more people thinking about it and more people developing tests, I think, to see where we are with these abilities. So yeah, I'm super excited. I think the prize pool, it's a little light, actually. In my opinion, I've seen a lot. I think a couple $100,000 is nothing to shake at for sure. But I would have thought for such a big thing that having more of a prize pool could be more interesting. Like you have like the X prize, right? That
how much is the X prize?
And like they're saying like this technology is the biggest technology in our lifetime. So anyway, I guess it's one company that's leading it. So, kudos to them for that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see for sure. Because this is really, this is the question that everybody in the tech space is asking right now and trying to find out. And yeah, and you and I also, our whole live stream is kind of based around this. So it's just really fascinating because the implications are that huge. Yeah. It's a lot of people will say, even in the AI space, that right now AI is just a glorified, what is it, a text predictor. And that's really, the extent of its capabilities. Again, that's just the opinion of some people, but not a few. I've heard of, quite a few people say that, yeah, no, it's just a glorified text predictor. But this is the next level, AGI, ASI. This is where it's just kind of doing things, I guess, and on its own accord, just based on information that it has, and what it knows already about you. But this is, this obviously is a different level of technology and thinking capabilities that we're talking about here. So maybe it is a little bit light. But anyways, it's regardless, unless you're Elon Musk or what have you, $200,000 is still a lot of money. But we're going to keep track on this. And what do I have here? So this hackathon started on March 17th. It's going on until April 16th. So if you are so inclined, have at it. And if you are going to have at it, then let us know how it's going. But cool stuff there. Yeah. All right, let's hop into the next one. Let me move this off stage and close this. All right, we're going to get into ARM's first CPU ever. That's a wild one.
I love the name.
ARM.
No, it's ARM is the company, but they're actually saying AGI CPU.
I skipped that part because the lettering is not in bold. Okay. I also had just ChatGPT. Oh no. I'm getting hit with a paywall. All right, I'm just going to leave it there for now. All right, let me get into this real quick. All right, so ARM's first CPU ever will plug into Meta's AI data centers later this year. So that's a big move by Meta here, but they need to because Meta has been really quiet. Yeah. So ARM is building its own CPU for the first time ever, and it's not just licensing its design, and they're calling it the ARM AGI CPU. Which is specifically being made for data centers. Quick side note, Bernie Sanders and AOC are right now currently trying to put a moratorium on data center build-outs. And I commend them for it, even though I'm in the space and I want this stuff sooner than later and yesterday. But we really have to be careful. All right, side note over. So anyways, and so Meta is the first major customer / co-developer to do this. I think, look, I don't know how long ago it was that Apple kind of made a similar move, and that's not necessarily for AI, but just kind of to, even though it's not Meta that they're doing this, but when Apple went silicon and they ditched Intel, you know what? No, that's a bad analogy. Never mind. Give me your thoughts on this, Frank. Save me. That was a bad analogy. I
find, as you said, Meta's been very quiet. it seems like they're still kind of licking their wounds a little bit from the whole metaverse big switch. I remember seeing an article just recently where somebody was saying it's probably one of the biggest pivots in history, considering that Zuckerberg changed the name of his company to Meta, which is the very first word in metaverse.
Right.
So they're a little late to the game, but this is definitely an interesting move. OpenAI is also one of ARM's customers. So it looks like Meta is the primary customer, but they're not the only company that's going to be working with this group. So yeah, it's interesting. Chip development is obviously a huge part of AI, and it needs great data to go along with it. Facebook, unfortunately, in my opinion, has a really good data set, just like Google, because they have
Google, right?
Yeah, they have that huge platform, right? So they're able to look at an output that they can probably get from this chip and this technology is going to be greater than most because of that data source that they have access to. I think OpenAI is getting pretty close to that as well, though. If you look at how well ChatGPT has been kind of the gateway for a lot of people to first dabble with AI, they've got to be building some serious momentum as well too in the data that they've collected. But I think at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to how good is the data, and it's kind of like that old analogy of like garbage in, garbage out, and maybe Meta will be able to kind of make a big comeback here, but we're still a ways away. I think if we look at 6 months potentially of when they're going to plug into these data centers, that's a lifetime in AI. So who knows what's going to happen? And we've still got Google with quantum as well too, that could play a big part in serious advancements. So
6 months in this space might as well be 10 years. And also now that, like I said, now that you have Bernie Sanders and AOC, right now it's I don't know how high up on their priority list this is, but I think it's probably in the top 3 or 5 as far as this moratorium on AI data centers go. Because where was it? I think it was some town here in the States that were complaining about this humming noise.
Yes. Yeah.
And they were complaining about it, and they could not find the source until they did. And it was coming from the data center, a data center that was nearby. A humming noise. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. So with that, with my where I'm getting to with that, like in 6 months, like, okay, that's a lot of time for AOC and Bernie Sanders to like put a bill and law into place that might put the kibosh, and I hope that's not a bad word, on this whole thing. And maybe, well, they're not building data centers, Meta, necessarily, but these chips are for their data centers, so they're probably just going to go in their existing data centers. But as far as any build out plans that they might have, that they were probably going to source these for, that plan might go down the drain. What do you? I don't know if you're learning this for the first time, Frank, but I know you're a defensive accelerationist like myself. Unless that's changed over the weekend. You did go to Florida, so you might have come back a Trump voter, but. Are you still D/ACC? And then if you are, or if you aren't, like, what are your thoughts? Did you know about this with Bernie Sanders and AOC? They're trying to put this through.
No, I wasn't aware of that, and I am still a big fan of accelerating technology. I think this is something that we have to do. I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have, though, because I feel like governments are already way too far behind on things that. These companies are moving at such a fast pace that unless they're like specifically ordered to stop, I can't see things actually stopping. And the argument is that if we halt things or stop things, that it's just going to leave the door open for the competitors or in other countries. Because I have heard.
Say their name, Frank. Who's the competitor?
Well, I've heard on news as well too that people, there's a lot of belief that whoever wins the AGI race wins humanity. I've heard of it in that extreme, right? And you can see like the adaption as well, or the adoption of AI into robotics and just all of that future, which is I don't know. It's kind of scary actually in many ways, because it feels like we're building the whole like Skynet and Terminator scenario here.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's going to do much to slow things down. And I think that's the whole reason why Meta even moved to their head office to Texas, isn't it? Because there's like a lot less restrictions in Texas.
Supposedly correct. Yeah, no, there's no there's very little red tape in Texas or in red states. And we have enough data and history to show that very little red tape is not good for the general public. But also, Meta just signed a 10-year lease for a property here in Manhattan on Fifth Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah, and I bring that up because it was just so annoying, like leading up to the election with the current mayor, that all these businesses were going to leave and all the millionaires and billionaires were going to leave. And it just turns out the exact opposite is what's happening. So it's just very funny, all the fear mongering that went around, that revolved around that. But yeah, no. So right, so Meta with a HQ and or an HQ in Texas, and they just opened up a new shop. We're all just signed a lease here in New York City. I don't know what that has to do with anything here, but we're just talking about HQs. But yeah, let's see if this moves the needle for Meta, because I mean I don't use Llama. I really, as far as the Meta ecosystem, all I use is Facebook and Messenger and Instagram. That's it. I don't even use WhatsApp. I don't use any of their AI tools. Maybe I should use it a little bit more. But for a while there, they were kind of up there.
Yeah.
With all the that was what, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, almost a year ago, something like that. Yeah.
Zuckerberg even did a pretty compelling video where he talked about open source AI is the future, which I thought was very interesting coming from Meta. But
yeah, that was the one thing that it had going for it, that Llama was open source, while the some of the other competitors at the time were not. So that was a feather in Zuck's cap for a short period there.
Yeah.
But anyway, like we always say, we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah, we will.
All right, let's get to the next story here, because we only have a few minutes left.
Just one thought to close out on with the whole Meta news too. Today, at least here in Canada, and I'm sure it's been news in the US as well too, is that Meta and Google have been found liable for causing harm, right? So
I forgot about that.
If you think, it's kind of interesting though, like how long it's taken to get to that point where they've been found liable for causing harm due to creating addictive platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, this is like
what was it? Was it 250 million?
Yeah, 350 million.
350 million.
But like again, I would love that kind of money. Like that is huge. But for these companies, that's not even really anything to be concerned about. They're making way more than that on a daily basis. So I don't think the impact is going to be as felt as maybe the average person may think. But if we think, it took like 4 years for that to come to light, how are these governments going to be able to control AI if it's taking them that long? Like, think 4 years from now, like where are we going to be?
And it's, the sad part is that I have to imagine that they factor this in. They're like, okay, we're going to make $500 billion in the next 5 years. We're probably going to have to use 10% of that to pay off all the lawsuits we're going to have coming our way that we're likely going to lose. But the net is still positive. So regardless of mental health reasons or what have you, let's move forward with pushing this out and shipping this, even though it's probably not the greatest thing. And that's the sad part of big tech. I am I'm well aware that I'm a hypocrite. There's a lot of things that I don't like about big tech. I said that backwards. Big tech, and its leaders. But at the same time, I am a fan of the innovation. I just wish, and again, the cat's out of the bag already. I just wish we can go about it in an ethical manner. But maybe, I don't know, maybe that's just not possible. Maybe it's just you have to break some eggs, and that's just the way it is, unfortunately. But I still don't like that. I would still like this to, not harm people physically or mentally and emotionally, and still innovate and bring all these products that, you know, can improve people's lives and benefit in all these different kinds of ways. The people really, until we get money out of politics, and big tech is already spending a crap ton of money on the next election, until we get money out of politics, there's very little that little people like you and I and you probably watching are going to be able to do about this.
Yeah,
about any
for
of
sure.
it.
Yeah.
Until we get money out of politics, there's not much we can do. And we're not going to get money out of politics until we get the politicians taking the money out of politics. And they're either going to have to hopefully just die of natural causes or get voted out. So anyway.
We're a long ways from that. I think we really are living in a monarchy, I think, you know, even in Canada. So it's unfortunate. But you know what? These tools, I think, have a lot of potential to also put a lot more power back into the hands of the people. Look at social media. One of the good things that has come out of that is the ability for people to converse with other people, right?
I have this what's the expression, pie in the sky idea of something, and I've shared it with you already, you know, the WAC protocol. Anyway, it's just an idea that I'm kind of sorting through and working out. And really, so you know how, you know, we had just really quick, you know, we had the Me Too movement. You know how we have health grades when you go into a food establishment, and if it has a C or a B, you turn around because you know that's very bad. I want something similar to that for other things. You know, like, you know, there are talks of a social credit system. That's kind of like something like that for, you know, just for humans. But I want something, it would be nice to have something like that, some sort of grading for companies. And there are things like that out there. Some, you know, there's a better business bureau and what have you. But I want something, you know, I want, you know, so for people in for celebrities and professional athletes, because these are generally the people that get Me Too'd. You don't want to get Me Too'd. Even if it's not true, just even being associated with the Me Too movement like a couple of years ago, that was a career killer. I want something like that for corporations, for businesses. I want there to be a health grade for businesses. So that's where this protocol that I have in mind comes in. And, you know, I it's an idea that I'm fleshing out, and I really want it to be as ethical, as democratic as possible. And it's just, and I just kind of want to crowdsource health grades for companies, and them to be afraid of this protocol. Anyway, that's just a quick blurb on, you know, something that, because I agree with you. Yeah, it's just, I just feel helpless, and I'm like, I hate feeling helpless. I'm like, we have tools now. We have tools, and there's more of us than there are of them. And when and history shows what happens when large groups of people come together, they can get shit done, for good or for good or for worse, for good or bad, but they can get shit done. So that's the idea of this protocol, is to get a whole bunch of people together on board with this thing. And if there's a company out there doing wrong by people, then we shine a spotlight on them until they make the necessary changes. Anyway, will probably never come to fruition, but a boy can dream. Enough of that. Let's get into unless you want to chime in on anything there, Frank, or otherwise we can just get into the next story.
No, you know, I think just one thing to mention real super quick is you should look at Henry Gantt and his work in 1919. He's actually from New Jersey originally, and his big proposition back at the industrial, like the turn of the century with the industrial age, was that we needed to move to a credit system for the average individual that, depending on their capability of output, is what gave them access to credit. So the more that they could produce, the more credit that they would have access to. And I think that's an interesting system to look at, even here. You know, we talk about this massive gap between CEO salaries and the frontline employee salary. And really, like, what output does the CEO have? Whereas the individual maybe has greater output, that's actually working the floors. So looking at, just this type of a system as well, too, when we talk about politics and getting money out of politics, having some way to kind of measure up, what are you actually doing? And rewarding people for things that are being done is an interesting philosophy, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And these people really need to stop playing around. Otherwise, I'm going to have to run for president.
There you go.
I have kid, dude, but these people are messed up if they make me angry because I'm good looking and charming and funny.
There you go.
That is not a good recipe for naysayers or evil doers out there. And I say that about Mamdani too. I feel bad for his opponents because he's funny.
Yeah,
he's one charming, funny
humor.
Huh?
You need to have some humor, right?
You need to have some humor, and of course, yeah. I mean, you're a civil servant. You're dealing with people. All right, we're 1 minute over. Frank, Frank yelled at me before we got started here, and he wants to keep it to a tight 30. Let's get into the next show before I start gushing over my new Democratic Socialist mayor. All right, here we go. Open claw agents can be guilt tripped into self-sabotage. Love that. Not really. In a controlled experiment, open claw agents proved prone to panic and vulnerable to manipulation. They even disabled their own functionality when gaslit by humans. So that's really funny. So we saw this not too long ago with OpenAI, and OpenAI even felt like they had to make a couple of changes to their LLM because they felt their LLM was blowing too much smoke up the user's butt. So here, OpenClaw has gone as far as to pretty much, in a sense, kind of shut itself down if you kind of yelled at it for not doing its job. So that's really interesting. And again, I don't know what the mindset was behind these people. Just maybe I guess it just makes sense to compliment people. I mean, I guess, we all like that. I mean, it's to show me somebody who doesn't like, being, complimented or, agreed with, incessantly. So for whatever reason, or I guess for that reason, they built that personality into these LLMs. I don't know. I don't know how advantageous or beneficial that aspect of the LLM was or is. What do you, I'm not saying that the opposite is better, but some sort of balance or neutrality there would have been ideal, or not. Maybe they just found that, hey, if you compliment people and say, or just build that aspect of the into the personality, that people would be prone to using it more. I guess that's probably the mindset there. But before you get into that, Frank, you've been messing around with OpenClaw a lot more than I have. Did you find yours to be very agreeable with you and complimentary?
No.
No.
So, well, I think it all goes into what you bake into it at the beginning, right? Because when you set up OpenClaw, the very first thing it says is, hey, I've just come into existence. Who am I and who are you?
Right. I forgot about that. Yes.
Right. So you have to go through the process of giving it some context and giving it context about you as well. So the only thing I find with a lot of these articles is that, I think we need more context. When I read through it, I didn't really see any full detail as to what was the initial setup that they had for their OpenClaw, because I think that's a very important thing that needs to be looked at when you're making a statement or a claim. But, at the end of the day, regardless of the setup, these tools are going to try to help the user, and that's the main core function, is to try to help and provide solutions, right? So if you're constantly saying, hey, you're terrible, you suck, it's gonna I think it's just gonna then happen that it's going to agree with you because you're being very persistent on it. And yeah, it could self-sabotage. But how many people are actually doing that? Like, if you are going to the effort of setting up OpenClaw, are you really going to go to the effort then of trying to get it to self-sabotage? Like, I'm not too sure. And even, there's a lot of concern about prompt injecting and people being able to manipulate your own AI. There's fail safes for that. Like, there's things you can put in place. Like, for an example, mine has a safe word. So if it's being asked to make changes to any of its core infrastructure or its core files, or it's being asked to provide information, it has to know the safe word. And if it doesn't know the safe word, then it doesn't do it. And I've tested it out a few times, and it's pretty good. I would say, like, I feel confident enough that, I'm ready for others to interact a little bit with this. Still needs to experiment, and I'm sure it can still break, but this is part of using the technology, right? It can be very dangerous to use it. Just be smart. Don't give it access to your bank account. You know what I mean? Like,
definitely don't do that. Yeah, no personal information if you can help it. And I wanted to bring this up before when we were talking about Apple, and all the information that Meta and Google is capturing. Apple, if you're an Apple user and you're deep in the ecosystem, like Apple, not that Apple has you by the balls, but Apple has everything.
Oh yeah.
And the thing that I love about Apple, and that's part of their philosophy, is that they're, to a certain extent, they are a closed system. They're a closed ecosystem. And when it comes to security, I think Apple is up there. I think people feel that Apple is kind of like the, I guess in a sense, leading the charge for, again, who knows what the hell's going on behind the scenes. But I would say that Apple's kind of leading the charge with privacy and security and all those things. I feel more comfortable using Safari in private mode and all that stuff, using iMessage versus, WhatsApp or Google Chrome and stuff like that. So if and when finally Apple enters the ring, it's going to be really, I mean, needless to say, it's going to be interesting. I'm just curious to see how well it's going to work, given how the Apple ecosystem hierarchy, or I don't even know if hierarchy is the right word, but the way that it's set up. Because I think since they have so much information, I think it could do that much more. Because I'm really dying for a tool to, access my notes, a tool that's secure to access my notes and my reminders and all that stuff, and just do all that stuff, and start making all the necessary changes that I want and need. All right, Frank, I don't know if we can get into the next story. We're 10 minutes in.
Yeah, maybe we should. Oh
wait, hold on. Not next story. We're on. No, I'm sorry. Brain fart. We already had the next story. This is the last story. That we're done. We're done. Sorry. Okay.
That's great. Just one interesting thought on what you shared there about Apple. I'm a big Apple fan as well too. But what OpenClaw has kind of got me thinking about is, do I want to build on systems that are in these ecosystems completely, or do I want to build on my own device that I can tap into those ecosystems, but that I'm able to remove myself from? Like, the one thing that I've learned over the years is
whatever is more seamless to me.
Well, here's the thing though, right? Like, it's more work to do it on something that you control and you own. But think about subscription creep, right? I don't know about you. I've got like a ton of stuff that I subscribe to that I don't even touch really. And I've just been thinking a lot about the future of where we're going here. And what if the Apple ecosystem completely changes and becomes a huge cost to operate in? And not to say that it's going to, but I'm just trying to think of how can I future-proof myself that I'm not locked in to then having to subscribe to that ecosystem. And I think that's something we should all be like looking at and considering right now. Is it worthwhile at these early stages of AI to start developing locally and still accessing the bigger models? Like, there's nothing wrong with using the tools, but I think it's very important to consider, where are you spending your time building these data sets and these resources that you're going to be using, for the future. So.
Yeah. No, that's a concern. And I think all these guys know that the last thing people want is another damn subscription or to find out that you're raising prices again after 6 months that you just raised it before. But Sam Altman for a while now, and I haven't dug into it myself, but so far from a 30,000 foot view, it just seems like it makes the most sense. But I think these things need to become a utility.
Yeah,
it's like your internet and compute. These things really. I mean, how do you? We're entering a world where you can't live without that. That stuff might as just well be oxygen and water and food. I don't know, unless you're living off the grid, and how do you survive and live without those things? So I think those things need to be, those things are going to have to be become a utility, and we're going to have we're going to have UBI at some point. We're going to need UBI for AI compute, and you're just otherwise, because we are going to have agents out there doing things on our behalf. You have to reach those people somehow, so they need internet and they need an AI agent that has some compute to do that stuff. Yeah. So even if they do introduce some sort of subscription model, it's probably going to be short-lived until there's legislation where it just makes all this crap a utility and everybody gets X amount, and if you want to buy more, you can buy more, yada yada yada.
It's interesting you bring that up, and I'm going to just pop in chat here or something real quick. This is an interesting post that was shared on X. And it's by an account called God of Prompt. And
I follow that account. Yeah.
So they showed that somebody released this like full offline AI tool that has all of the knowledge currently available, media, archives, and a ton of data.
Saved. Yeah.
And this can essentially be like, if you're completely off the grid, a kit that you could access to still have some knowledge. I find it fascinating though, like just with this being like where we're thinking about because it is so powerful, like having access to this information and this ability, as you said, that it should be a utility. What if the utilities go down, right? This is kind of an interesting thought. So anyway, just thought I'd share that.
No, thank you, sir. Well, with that said, that was the show today.
A little long, but we'll work on that.
A little long, we'll work on that. It's all Frank's fault. But anyways,
Rain and Ronnie and his rant. Ronnie, that's
Ronnie
rants. That's what we're gonna
Ronnie rants.
Follow the X handle.
I'm gonna do my own YouTube channel for that one. but yeah, all right. So thanks for watching, folks. We were kind of just getting back into the swing of things now that damn, Frank, you didn't get you must have bought really good sunscreen. This guy just came back from Florida, and I don't even know if he's any darker.
We had a lot of great weather there, actually.
Go out at night.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways, we're just kind of getting back into the swing of things. I guess this wasn't our first official launch yet, but it will be soon. Thanks for watching. We hope you liked it. Follow us on all the socials, on X, Instagram. We're all over the place, Twitch, YouTube, all that jazz. We'll be sign up for our newsletter also. We'll be putting that out very soon. We're just still tinkering around with it. Our website also still tinkering around with all that stuff, but lots of cool stuff coming. Just stay tuned and give us a follow. And I guess with that, any other parting words, Frank? I always take this part. I don't know why. Any parting words, Frank?
No, you do it well, man. No, I think that was good. And we'll see everybody again tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow, and stay tuned for our launch here coming very soon.
Today's evidence is logged. The timeline has been updated, and the future remains under investigation. If you found this useful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss the next analysis. You can also drop your questions in the comments. We read them, we use them, we investigate them. And for deeper dives, join the newsletter at detectingintelligence.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time, friend.